Hello, everybody. This video is really a narration of a PowerPoint to walk you through the needs assessment project. The needs assessment is intended to be a tool for improving reference services. That's important that we're focused on reference. So what you need to know about this project, there's so much, but anyway, these are the main things. You will implement this during this course. By that I mean in the needs assessment, you will be asked to collect some data that will need to be done within the confines of this course. It must take place in a real library. This is not a theoretical project. So those of you that may not have a library or maybe not even in a school setting, you will need to be identifying a public library, maybe one of your classmates' library, but you need to be in a real library, a real setting. And if you are in, say, the public library, you need to connect with the librarian so they know what you're doing and that it's not invasive for them, but they want to have an understanding of what this person is doing in their building, in their library. If you have questions, reach out to me, but really think this through before reaching out to me. See what options you have. The rationale of a needs assessment comes from Casale and Higher Math, where they state statistical truths and the institutional reliance on numbers are being used by all kinds of libraries across the nation, both as validation and as a way to support changes, modifications, and additions to library services. You all, as educators or involved in education, know about the importance of data and how that impacts funding, impacts changes. The needs assessment is an avenue for you to advocate for your library. A definition of a needs assessment is a systematic process to acquire an accurate, thorough picture of a system's strengths and weaknesses in order to improve it and meet existing and future challenges. So the needs assessment is not just seen as a need, but you will be making also a recommendation how to improve it. So based on your findings, what would be the next step? Let's look at the assignment. In week 3, you have the beginning of 2 graded phases. Week 3, sections 1 through 3 of the needs assessment, which are the introduction, the what to assess, and assessment methods sections, are due. In week 6, it's the whole thing. So in other words, you will take my feedback on your on your week 5 submission, correct it, and write the sections 4, 5, and 6 in addition to the references. So you will be submitting the whole document on week 6. So that means between week 3, week 6, you have 3 weeks to do the data collection and to analyze it and make recommendations. And I will make sure you understand up front, we are not a statistics class. We are looking at this in a way that would probably make real statisticians uncomfortable. The point of this whole assignment is to get you in a position where you can see what needs you have and ways you can validate that to administrators, to parents, and make your case for improving services. So in this assignment, I mean, we are looking at real data and your recommendations, your analysis of it, but I don't expect you to be applying statistical tests, any of of the higher level things that you might do in a dissertation. Uh, this is very simple process to get your feet wet with a needs assessment. So let's look at week 3. Week 3, there are 3 sections, uh, and the first one is to identify the need you will assess. So the first thing you need to do is identify, one, do you have a library you're in? If you don't, what library are you going to use? Because that will help direct your topic. Because if you're in a public library versus a school library, the needs are probably a little bit different. Then you need to be looking at who will be assessed. Where is this problem? Is it in the 3rd grade class? Is it in 4th grade Tennessee history? Is it the whole school? Something to do with hours. Keep in mind that the overarching problem, not problem, but the overarching content is coming from reference collections, the electronic collections. Notice you see that. What is the focus area on the right? It is the reference electronic collection, not print or reference services. Services is really broad. So by services, it would be instructing on the Tennessee Electronic Library. It would be perhaps changing hours. Maybe it has to do with going into a classroom versus students in the library. Maybe you want to do a new type of checkout system that would be helpful to your students or to your faculty. The people that you are working with is not going to be the whole school. It will be what you decide. So you're going to do a smaller portion. In other words, you will just I just want to look at 4th graders and Tennessee history resources. And what do they know about using the library's electronic resources for Tennessee history? Okay, it's that simple. Or maybe it is with the team, the 4th grade team, making them aware or coming in to train when the students are ready for it. So that's just one little scenario. That is not something golden. It's just an idea to get your mind ticking. So when you get ready to write your section, the introduction, so in this one, you're fully going to describe the who of this. So this is the setting. So what type of library? Where is it located? And let me ask you this. How do you find this information? It's the school's report card. Those things are public knowledge. You can pull them up. You can reference them. This is not your personal knowledge, okay? This content is going to be referenced from somewhere else. So you will have this as one of your citations, and I'm sure you will be also using CASAL and Higher Math, and maybe something else that you have discovered along the way. So that would be part of the introduction. And then you're going to identify the broad study area. The needs assessment will take place looking at the reference electronic collection. The word electronic is not here, but it's implied. Why am I narrowing that? You've already done a weed and feed. You don't need to be doing that again. That is not the purpose of this assignment. So look at electronic, meaning the Tennessee Electronic Library. Maybe it's Pebble Go. Maybe it's some other resources that your school system provides. Okay. You also see it should be about 2 to 3 paragraphs. Still in week 1. So the second step is to decide what you're going to assess. Sounds like I'm repeating myself. You have determined the school, so you know that you want to be in this school or this type of library. and you know that it's going to take place, say, fourth grade again, etc., and so on. So, looking at that chunk of content, what is that you want to assess? Do you want to see, like, for instance, look at the left here on the slide. What needs do you see? Confusion, lack of use, requests. Maybe there's a terrific database and no one uses it. Or maybe there's a Tennessee history biography, um, what do I want to say, flyer or handout or opportunity for you to go in a classroom and talk to them about the resources. So, what are you seeing that's wrong? What's going on that's making you think should be an area to assess? Could it be a new service? Could it be something to do with staffing that, maybe the librarian needs to be more present and not in the back if you have control over that? I mean, I get it. You are the lead person in the library, and it's not like you can choose to hide out in the back doing all the uh, behind the scenes work that goes on. You are both places. So, the other thing you see down here, do you want to get a pulse on user needs? So maybe you're thinking, man, I'm not sure if our hours are good or bad, but you could assess, questionnaire, survey a group of people about your hours, and then you have data to support that. Maybe it's on your collections, maybe it's the databases. You'll see throughout this PowerPoint, I'll be referencing Casale and Higher Math. Go into that and read that content. It is so good and very practical for you. On this particular slide, I want you to look at the video that's here. It's a YouTube video. I think it's less than 3 minutes. How to write a problem statement. So what you're doing here is collecting this information, and your outcome is going to be a problem statement. So when we go into this section, what to assess, you're going to start with the problem statement. What are you assessing? The problem in XYZ library, or the problem this needs assessment is going to address is blah, blah, blah. And keep in mind that problem statement is going to be your goal, your focus. That's what your data collection is going to help reveal what is the depth of the need, and also help reveal a recommendation, a way to mitigate, intervene, solve the problem. Okay, so this problem statement will be a thread that runs through because you want to come back and visit it, and it'll give you that structure. You'll want to explain the problem and why it matters. What does it matter that the fourth graders don't have time during the day to come and use resources on Tennessee history or whatever, or haven't been trained in it? I can tell you in my head, there's so many things that matters. Describe how things should work, right? And remember, you aren't talking to people who are educators or who are savvy with the language in your school. Make sure it's like to the dumb reader, of course. And tell why you selected it. Why? I mean, obviously fourth grade is huge because that's the time they learn about Tennessee history or another Minnesota history or another state's history. The length of this section should be 1 to 2 pages. The video will help you walk through this process. I think it'll be very helpful to you. And the last part of week 3 is decide the assessment method. So now that you have the setting and the school, the broad picture, and now you've got it narrowed into the actual problem, how are you going to measure that? The assessment method. So in this once again comes from Casale and Higher Math, and you'll see there's about 12 pages here of awesome content to help you figure out how to do this. Some of this is not going to, you don't have enough time really to do observations, um, or a case study. Suggestion box, I don't know that you would have enough time. Most likely it could be a survey, could be a collection of interviews. Surveys were going to be the easiest thing that you can do, is create a short survey. But look at what Casale and Higher Math say about each of these types of assessment methods and decide which will work best with your problem. And as you're writing that, this is section 3, the assessment method. So what data collection method did you choose? Describe it. Why was it the best choice? Reference Casale and Higher Math. Casale and Higher Math 2018 reported that surveys are able to blah, blah, blah. And that is why you chose this, because it meets that need for you. And then this is the next part, is the data collection implementation plan. And this is where you're going to say, how are you going to collect it? On Tuesdays, the team meets, and I can get all 4 teachers in the 4th grade, and I can ask them to complete a survey, and then get that information where you can analyze it. If you're doing kids, you got to have permissions, and a lot of gates are involved with children. But that may be something you can work with. It may not be. Just make sure you cover these issues. One thing, if we were really, I guess, professional, or really doing this on a high academic level with the data collection, there would be guidelines on the number of surveys you have to have completed, the number of interviews, the number of focus groups, the number of people involved. Those are not being applied, other than you should have more than 3. Okay? Don't want one person doing a survey, right? It needs to have something where you're collecting data and getting a consensus from that data of the problem and ways that it can be resolved. And notice the length of this, 3 to 4 pages. Okay, so that is due week 3. And on week 3, you're going to be writing this up using the APA student paper format, which is linked in. If it's not in the assignment, it would be linked in the MLIS research guide. You will also see a sample, a very simple example/sample of a needs assessment. These are, it's not perfect, it's just trying to give you that visual look for it. So don't sit down with that example and kind of copy the language, because it won't fit what you are doing. Every one of you will have something unique that you will need to be writing about, okay? Because you're using APA and you're using the APA student paper format, you will be using third person. You'll be writing in past tense, okay? No I, no me, no we, no they. You're going to be using, if you have to have a statement that involves you, it would be the researcher, okay? But not I did, or we decided. No, you make sure you're using third person and you're writing in past tense, and follow all of that general APA formatting, which is double spaced. You know how to write your section numbers. And there are, on the APA page in the MLIS research guide, there is information there about section headings and what they should look like, where you can go into the APA style blog and look at how they should be formatted. You guys are really savvy with being able to answer questions and find the answers to questions. So APA is not a guessing game. It is something you're going to check before you submit. So lean into the APA 7 page on the MLIS guide because it'll have links, it'll have ways that you can verify what you have done. Do not just copy things from citation generators or from um, even what I have submitted or in Blackboard. We don't catch all of those, so make sure that you have corrected everything, okay? All right, so for week 3, you are submitting sections 1 through 3 and a references list. That's all. I will give you feedback on that. And so when week 6 comes, on week 6, you're going to start with your 4th section, which is analyzing data. So this is where you're going to look at the data, identify the key needs and priorities. You know, you're going to write about this, develop just one chart or table. And it doesn't have to illustrate the whole findings. If there's one particular piece of it you want to illustrate, you could just have one table to do that or one chart. This is a pie chart. This is a line graph. This is a table. It can be anything like that, but it should look professional and be generated through Word or Excel. Okay. So in section 5, you will follow section 4 up with your recommendations. This is where you're going to explain the rationale and the potential impact of your recommendation using your data. So if you were to use your data, you know, what do you recommend is the way to resolve it? And what's the value of that to your library? Provide an evaluation plan. So how are you going to see if whatever you determined is a good recommendation or an intervention, if you will, has succeeded? What is your way, in other words, of following up and the effectiveness of the recommendations? And tell us what's coming next, right? This should be 1 to 2 pages. And I see here on the analyzing data, this is probably 1 to 2 pages as well. When you do a chart or a table, it should not be the size of the whole page. It should be similar to what I have here. It could be half a page or a quarter or a third of a page, not the whole page. Okay, that would be important as you're organizing your content. Okay, so then we have recommendations. The last thing is your conclusion. So this is summarizing it. So we started this off and we're measuring blah, 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 and we found out this, and the recommendation was to do this. You know, the problem statement said this, and we were able to identify, or we were surprised, or we find that there's something else. You guys are so good at being able to identify different solutions and ideas. You're such good idea generators. This is where you would say, this could be done and this could be done. And that's how you're going to conclude it. But you are going to loop back into the problem statement to see how the data you collected conclude that information. The last thing here is references. So you're going to, whatever sources you used in the text have to be cited on the references list. So if you reference Casale and Higher Math, if you reference Indeed for that video, you want to have them sitting on your references page. And anything on the references page must be talked about, cited in the text. So when you look at the APA student paper format, this is a separate page. It's a page break, references. You also, here on the references, if you found other sources, you could certainly add them here as well. Now, I have a couple, maybe 3 slides of tips that have to do with this, with the data collection. So think about this. If you're thinking about observing behavior, just think about And you might say, I can do that. I can sit during lunch or come early during the day. And but you want to understand fully what is your purpose of the observation. How would it be conducted? How long a time? Who's observing? How will the observations be recorded? All of these questions will be answered in the appropriate section where you are discussing the assessment method chosen. If you want to use a survey or a questionnaire, how are you going to collect the data? That means, how are you going to distribute it? Are you going to do a survey monkey, which you could do? Are you going to do a paper survey, etc.? So you're going to describe the instrument and the dates that you are going to survey and collect data, including the numbers of people. You know, the best time is to get them at lunch, and I'm going to hand out a paper survey, and so I can get the things back where I can look at them. You will not include your actual survey in the text of the report. You will send me, if you're going to do a survey, you need to email me the survey document, or in the email, the list of questions you plan to use. And I want you to be sure you look at CASAL and Higher Math, because they're going to talk to you, or in general, I think, about appropriate survey questions, how to word things. So believe it or not, there's an art to that. So you wouldn't ask a question like, that's a leading question. And that's why we have Likert scales, because they take away the bias from a question. So instead of saying, would you like to see candy being given at lunch? Of course, they're all going to say yes. Well, most of them will probably say yes. Instead, you would ask something that is, how would you feel about, or what do you think about something, and you give them a choice. Do you agree or not agree, etc. So, and I'm not trying to stress you with that. I want you to dig back into that chapter in CASAL and Higher Math and look at it. Then craft your questions and send it to me, and I'm going to give you some feedback. I want to know who you're going to give it to and when you're going to give it, these things that you see here. Okay? The last tip has to do, if you're going to test, sometimes you want to test how much students know, or even faculty. You know, it's kind of like a pre-test, post-test, where you have an opportunity to, in between the pre and post, do a training, do some information sharing, do an educational session. I don't think you're going to have that time in this time frame, so I don't know that this is relevant, but you may figure something out and want to do that. But these are the questions. If you're going to give a test, who developed it? What was the test group? It was only fourth graders from Mrs. Smith's class, because they are the, quote, honor students, or they, quote, are the largest class, so you could get the largest amount of responses, etc. Okay, so those are just some tips. Then I have my references list here. Some of these are tips that you'll see in this link to SurveyMonkey, or Sleeth. This is the link to the video, and of course we have CASAL and Higher Math here. So, if you have questions on this assignment, I want you to email me directly, but I want you to have thought through the process and given it some thought and have some ideas, and read that chapter in CASAL and Higher Math, because I think that will give you the context, and it's telling you also this is a really good thing for you guys to know how to do in a professional setting. Okay? All right. Thank you.